I'm live and I'm excited about that. Today, I want to talk about leadership and the courage that it takes to express leadership, to strike out on a leadership journey. And I picked this background because this is actually an office in one of the buildings in Philadelphia where the U.S. began. The leaders at the beginning of the country sat down to write documents that formed the basis of the Constitution and other places. And I have a whole bunch of these pictures because when Joy and I were back there 3 or 4 years ago, we took a bunch. And I don't remember which room this was, but it just reminded me of the kind of leadership that the folks there took. And that was, of course, at the peril of their lives, and most of them suffered greatly. In fact, I read a document that talked about each of the founding fathers and their lives afterwards, the ones that signed the Declaration and the Constitution and the other documents that were instrumental. And I was surprised. Every one of them went through hardships, lost fortunes, lost everything. And so when they wrote down, we pledge our lives and our sacred honor, our lives, our fortunes, and sacred honor, or some phrase like that, it was true. And it came to be true for them right powerfully and in the most personal and profound way. I want to talk about leadership right now as we come into the concluding, I hope, we all hope, the concluding times of this worldwide situation that's drawn so much attention, the pandemic. It's also next week is the last week of the Olympics. And there's lots going on. There's just a lot going on in the world right now. Really good things. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Really good things and a lot of troubling things. I was just seeing the news upstairs in between stuff on the Olympics and talking about protests in different places and trucks lined up to block roads and to do, call attention to things that for them are very important. And there's good things to be done for protesting and good things to be said for all voices to be heard and everything. And there's a real struggle with the balance between getting voices heard and imposing your will on others. So civil disobedience, where you block entrances to buildings and block roads and borders and things. Civil disobedience is good in one sense, and on another sense, if someone parks all around your house so you can't get in or out because they don't like the color of your lawn or the paint on your house, they have a right to protest that, but hey, you can't get in or out of your house, and so there's always a balance there. But anyway, today I want to talk about leadership and courage. Because leadership, real leadership, starts inside, and it always originates with the courage and thinking and behavior of the leader. And we, for a long time, and it's not so much true anymore, but leadership was viewed as the person in charge who had authority to tell other people what to do, the boss. And I worked in a lot of companies during my career where, there was the boss. And I worked in one company where it was shift work, and in the morning when the boss came in, it was always scary. It was a fearful time, the boss, and there was a night shift on, and when the boss came in, everything had to be on his desk in a certain way, and the shift leader was fearful that, the boss would come to the door and, do this. And that was always a fearful thing. Like there was, and there was definitely the boss and definitely in charge, but that's absolutely no way to be a leader and absolutely no way to run a group of people and get the best performance out of them. Fear-based kind of leadership, and that isn't good. And we're seeing that a lot demonstrated over and over in the world. We have a crisis going on in Europe with one country thinking they're going to invade another country, and another group of countries with the Soviet Union and the Ukraine, and other countries are rallying to the support of Ukraine. And I live in Canada right now, although my wife and I are dual national, U.S., Canada, and there's all kinds of countries that are supporting that. the supporting Ukraine in defense of their territorial boundaries. So this is all evidences of the need for real leadership. And like I said to start with, leadership starts inside. So if you want to have real leadership, the first place to look is in the mirror. Is your life an example of real leadership? Now, what does it take to have good leadership? Well, first of all, you have to have a goal or a clear objective, like you're in charge of what to make what happen, right? I mean, that's the first question. So if a boss has a department, the department has a function in the company and a role and a goal, a set of goals to accomplish. And if those are accomplished, then things are good. So let's start with you, your own life. Do you have specific goals for yourself that you're going to accomplish today, this week, this month, this year? Like here we are in 2022. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary quite quickly of pandemics and lockdowns. I'm coming up on the 2-year anniversary of my podcast. That's how that started, was a little bit funny. In March of 2020, my wife, Joy, who's my business partner, got a phone call from someone who knows me and knows that I speak and do motivational stuff, and asked, as the lockdowns were just starting and, we were watching case numbers in Europe for coronavirus go up, and it's kind of scary, and maybe for a minute we all thought, oh no, this is like, terrifying, terrible, maybe Armageddon or whatever. Anyway, they called and said, does Kellan have a podcast? Because they were looking for something motivational to listen to, and we didn't. But my wife said, yes. And then she came down and said, we have a podcast. So I started a podcast then, and part of it has to do with leadership, and I'll tell you why. The name of the podcast is Your Ultimate Life. Your Ultimate Life. And I define ultimate life as creating a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. And the way you create it is by serving with your divine gifts. So creating a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with your divine gifts. And I decided to do a daily podcast because I thought, in this kind of stuff going on, I should do this daily. So it's a short podcast, 15 minutes, and I've done it now daily, and I missed a few days when we moved, but I just recorded episode 620. And, that's 730 is 2 years, right? 365 times 2. But episode 620 is now in the can. I think we're published up to 612. And the whole point of that was to offer encouragement every day for self-leadership, for making the choices, for being the kind of person you choose to be, for making a clear definition of who you want to be, and then staking your claim and being that. If someone said, who are you? Usually we respond with our name. I'm Kellan, or I'm an engineer, or I'm an accountant, or for so-and-so, or, some kind of answer that talks about one or more of the roles that we have. That's a small part of who we really are. Who are you is defined in terms of your character, your energy, how you show up in the world, right? And so one of the things that I've thought about a lot is I can't lead anyone else effectively unless I'm leading myself effectively, unless I'm doing the things I mean to do. If I'm showing up in the world, in the way I mean to show up. If I'm being who I mean to be. And what does that mean? Well, we're human beings, right? Not human doings, although often we lose track of that. So I challenge you in the context of leading yourself to ask this question. Who are you being? Okay, and that might sound like a cryptic woo-woo question, but it's actually one of the most, if not the most important and powerful question you can ask yourself in any moment. Like you can go into any situation and how you are being determines everything about your experience in that situation. Even something as simple as doing this broadcast. So I've chosen to do a live broadcast talking about leadership and courage. Now, I could be a person who thinks I'm going to tell you all the answers, and therefore I'm telling you this is what it takes to be a leader. I could be a person who is frightened of video, and so I show up tentatively and not very certain or not very interesting energetically. That would be me being a different person. And so it's not a silly, but it's a small example. If you show up in a conversation with your spouse and you choose to be a kind, loving person, each sentence you say and the energy it carries will be a different energy than if you choose to be a distracted, frustrated person. That's true in every interaction. So what I'd like you to do to get some value out of this leadership idea is think about how you are choosing to be. Because that, what I discovered, and see, I didn't used to know or live or understand this. I sort of viewed everything as happening to me, like the weather happened to me, or something bad at work happened to me, or other things happened to me, and then my job was to cope with it the best I could. And you can live like that, and you can go through your life like that, but that's not very powerful. So if I say I'm the creator of my life, then let's just look at something as simple as the weather. The weather shows up and it's bad weather, it's snowing. If I'm the creator of my life, I can say, oh, it's snowing. That means I can't do this and I can't do that, and I can experience frustration. And I have created that because I chose to be frustrated. If on the other hand, I show up and say, hey, it's snowing, we need the moisture, it's good, I may change some plans. In fact, I may go have some fun in the snow. And I'm going to need to shovel later. Good, I need the exercise anyway. So I've created a completely different experience with the same snow on the same day. Now, that's a small example, and it's one that's real life because it's supposed to snow tonight. Your opportunity as a leader starts most powerfully and profoundly with yourself. You can't be a leader of yourself unless you know where your ship is going. Isn't it time for you and me, each of us, to recognize the mark that you want to leave in the world? Like, what do you want to be remembered for? What difference do you want to make? Someone once told me that the meaning of something was the difference it makes. And they said, well, if it makes no difference, it has no meaning. Well, what happened in this room here with the founding documents written in for the U.S. had a profound effect on not only those people who pledged their lives in their sacred honor and suffered for it for many years, but on also thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world over 200 plus years. Some would argue the effects were good and some bad, but for better or worse, the U.S. has been a beacon and a power in the world to champion liberty and to help people achieve their dreams. There's also been mistakes and things that have happened, and so I'm not defending any of those. But I am asking you to look in your own life and make a choice about how you lead yourself. Now, I don't know what you're going to do with that, but how I've chosen to lead myself is to ask myself in every situation, and I do this every morning, who am I being this morning? And I have a list of things that I remind myself that I've declared that I want to be. I want to be a beacon of light. That's one of them. So that means everything I do, and I've done 3 podcast episodes for other hosts today. I conducted a class. I'm doing this live. And I have a place to go tonight doing some work in my church with the youth program. If I'm a beacon of light and I choose to be that, and I said so, I'm a beacon of light, then that means the way I show up, the way I interact, the way I speak, the energy I carry, my entire presence in that context is as what? A beacon of light. So that means I'm not distracted with frustrations on my own. That means I choose to smile and to lift others' spirits. I choose to be happy. I choose to serve. I choose to solve problems instead of create them. Those would be some of the things that I would choose to create as a beacon of light. Now, that's a little example, and what I'm doing doesn't really matter for you, but I invite you to think about, who are you being? Are you being a beacon of light? Do you want to be? Are you being a true and honest person? Are you being an encouraging person? Are you being a frustrated person? Are you being the most loving spouse you can if you're in a partnership like that? Are you being an empathetic member of your church or community or family? Those are choices. And when I finally learned to get past the idea that the events around me and the behavior of people around me decided who I was and decided what I needed to do, then all of a sudden I felt like I had power. I got to create the circumstances of my life. And one outcome of that I would offer to you is that you create your life experience, moment to moment, day to day. You get to decide if you're happy. Joy is a choice. Happiness is a choice. So if you say, I choose to be happy, and I do that part of this statement that I live into and read to myself, I have it memorized and say every day is, I am happiness. I am happy because I choose it. I can choose, and so can you, to be happy in the midst of any circumstance. And you can argue with that, but the one of the most powerful examples of that was a book by Viktor Frankl that I'm sure you've heard of, Man's Search for Meaning. And in the midst of a World War II concentration camp, he made the following observation. In the midst of those terrible circumstances, there were some people who gave in to the misery and pain and struggle that was being inflicted on them. And there were others in the very same circumstance who chose to get up, walk around, encourage, lift the spirits of others. Same circumstance, same amount of starvation, same amount of mistreatment, same amount of cruelty, and some made a choice to make a difference. Why would that happen? Well, they made a choice about who they were being. And so leadership, real leadership, is about that choice first. Are you being a leader where people can come to you and it's safe to talk to you? Is it safe to bring concerns and problems? Is it safe and okay because they know they can depend on you? They know that discussing what's going on with them or with a situation, is it safe? Is it okay? Can they expect support? You've probably worked for someone where something bad happens and crap flows downhill. So it happens, they get yelled at, and then they yell at you, and it all goes downhill. You may have had the privilege of working for someone also who protected you, who said, and they took whatever was coming and they handled it. And if it was a legit problem, they solved it. Now, which one did you like to work for? I've worked for both. I've absolutely worked for both, and so have you. Probably. I know that I didn't feel any loyalty. I didn't have any good vibes. I certainly didn't feel any kinship with the leader who passed everything downhill and they got yelled at me. Okay? I felt a great deal of respect and admiration for the leader in the company I worked for who insulated us, even though we needed to fix something. So it wasn't that they pretended problems away or ignored it, but they didn't wash hands and say, well, not my fault, these bad people, stupid, wrong, whatever. They didn't do that. We attacked the problem, we fixed it, we solved it, and nobody felt minimized, nobody felt ridiculed, nobody felt Okay, now that goes true in a company, it's true in a family, it's true in a business partnership, and it's true for yourself. And this is the last thing I want to talk about, which is how are you leading yourself? When you make a mistake, are you compassionate to yourself? What is the language you use toward yourself? I used to just engage in massive self-flagellation and self-loathing and self-recrimination and negative talk all the time. In fact, I was convinced that I wasn't worth much, and I used to treat myself that way, and I said things that I would have never allowed to be said to one of my kids or anyone that I cared about, but I treated myself that way regularly. I was convinced that I was not okay. Well, from that place of self-loathing, I was never able to create anything powerful, and if I did, no surprise, I would sabotage it because somehow I didn't deserve that. So as we conclude today, I want to invite you to listen to your language. How are you leading yourself? Who have you declared yourself to be? Do you love yourself? Would I know that if I listened to your language and I heard how you talked to yourself, how you worked with yourself, how you worked out problems and situations that didn't go the way you wanted? Would I believe that you were compassionate and loving toward yourself? Because that's where leadership starts. In your heart, how you treat yourself is a key indicator of how you really treat others. And the final truth, which some are going to argue with, is you cannot love anyone any more than you love yourself. You cannot be a leader for others any better than you are a leader for yourself. Leadership starts inside. Courage starts inside. Having the courage to tell the truth with compassion to yourself first, leading yourself so that you can be a beacon of light and lead others. That truth, that willingness, and that desire is so essential in today's mixed world of recriminations and anger and blame and canceling and everything else. Be a leader. Tell the truth. Start with love. And it all starts inside. We'll see you tomorrow.